Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue number 41 about the one, the only, Captain Mar-Vell herself, CAROL Danvers.
Yeah, she's kind of a big deal.
Just kind of. So before the movie comes out this weekend, my wife and I will be going to see it along with my brother-in-law tomorrow night. Well, Thursday night, if you're listening to this on release day, Wednesday. So we are very, very excited to go see the latest addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Neither my brother-in-law and I, nor I feel you, Doc, are intimidated by the notion of a strong, powerful woman. We are going to see the movie. We are going to enjoy it. And to all of the sniveling fanboys who are upset at some of Brie Larson's comments that she wants to see more inclusivity in representation in media and in the press corps. If you're upset by that, then you're the exact reason why everyone is calling for more inclusivity in everything.
Well said.
Representation matters. That's all I'm going to say, because that does not really reflect too much on the comics. So, but before we get started, as always, you can find us on our website, capesonthecouch.live. We are on all forms of social media at Capes on the Couch. You can also subscribe to our Patreon, which, Doc, by the way, I have a little surprise for you, and I held off until we were recording so I could get your authentic reaction. We have a brand new president level Patreon.
Whoa.
Yep.
Okay. That's awesome.
So we have officially maxed out our president level patrons. Ariel.
Okay.
Ariel, I'm not sure how she chooses to pronounce it, but she has joined the ranks of Brian and Matt as our $10 a month patrons. So much thanks and appreciation, Ariel. We are that much closer to live streaming our recording sessions, which, as I said, we will do if we hit the $50 a month. So we're in the mid 40s now. So if just a couple more folks choose to subscribe at maybe the $1 or the $3, the $5 levels, you get some early access. If you're at 3 and up, you get the uncensored content. If you're 5 and up, or even if you just want to do the $1 just to say, hey, I support this show, $1 a month, and we show us some love, you can go to patreon.com/capesonthecouch and subscribe. So, Ariel, we will be reaching out to you. I already sent you a message to ask if you have any suggestions for who you want to see done in the remainder of our March episodes, because aside from Carol and next week, Monica Rambeau, we are not married to the idea of our last 2 episodes this month, and we can just bump them for later.
I just want to say I am grateful that she is part of our world.
Oh. You may have just guaranteed that this will be the only month in which she subscribes, because after a comment like that, she may just pull her Patreon subscription.
Hey, you pay your money, you take your chances.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. I suppose I'm sure it's not the first Little Mermaid joke she's heard in her life. So I just wanted to give her a special shout out and thank you very much. And also our weekly podcast recommendation is Anxiety this week. Gerald's battle with anxiety and panic disorder that he catalogs throughout the show. Just he says at the beginning of the episodes that they are in chronological order as he describes his history. So this is a show in which you definitely want to start with episode 1 and work your way through. But in any case, he's at anxiety.podbean.com. That's ANXZENITY. So I guess he's combining Zen and anxiety. So that's sort of where it comes from. You can also check him out on Twitter at Anxiety. So thank you, Gerald. You've been a big fan of the show, and we'd just like to sort of return the favor. And you can catch us on all your major podcast platforms and venues. And if you listen to us on a platform that allows you to rate and review, please like, subscribe, rate, and review our show, and we will read your reviews on the show.
Yep.
I think that just about covers it for the intro. So to tie in with the, as I said, the latest addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe dropping this week, Captain Marvel, we are going to cover the history of one CAROL Danvers. So CAROL Danvers was created by Roy Thomas and Gene Colan in Marvel Superheroes number 13, March 1968. She was originally an Air Force officer working as head of security of a missile base alongside Dr. Walter Lawson, the alias of Mar-Vell, at the time, the original and only Captain Marvel. She gets caught in an explosion of a Kree device called the Psyche-Magnetron and sustained some serious injuries. She was healed by Captain Marvel and returned and recuperated with some superhuman abilities. Now, originally, these abilities manifested themselves without her conscious knowledge. So she would shift into what would become known as the Ms. Marvel persona, and then Ms. Marvel would leave and she would return to CAROL with no memory of what she did as Ms. Marvel.
That sounds like the definition of dissociation. If you mention dissociative identity disorder, I swear I will end this podcast right now.
I'm not going to say it.
Good.
But you just did?
Wow. Okay. Then again, I was going to say if my pun didn't get it, then Ariel's going to leave on your pun. But if she subscribed and became a patron, then she's used to the puns by now.
Yeah, she knows what she's in for. So anyway, Carol's now calling herself Ms. Marvel, and she works as a human Kree hybrid and joins the Avengers. So in Avengers 200, she gets kidnapped. This is one of the most, dare I say, controversial storylines in Marvel history, and certainly with respect to CAROL Danvers as a character. In Avengers 200, she gets kidnapped by Marcus, the son of Immortus, and she is brought to an alternate dimension where he uses machines to seduce and impregnate her. Their son rapidly ages to another version of Marcus. He takes her back to the alternate dimension after the Avengers believe that she's fallen in love with him.
So there was a matter of impregnation against her will. I don't think it's a stretch to say that's a huge problem.
She returns to Earth after Marcus dies, and she's attacked by Rogue, who absorbs her powers and memories. And that's a whole other situation because that's where Rogue gains, frankly, a lot of her powers and later issues from, is Rogue definitely struggled with the notion of CAROL living in her head for quite some time. She confronts the Avengers and blames them, basically saying that they did nothing to stop Marcus from brainwashing her. And she goes after Beast and a number of the other Avengers because she basically says, you all were very happy that I was pregnant and I fell in love with this guy, even though you knew nothing about him. And he took me away to this alternate dimension and none of you did anything to stop. And they were all like, but we thought you loved him. And she said that basically you should have known better. You did a disservice to me. And some really rough and heavy stuff there. Yeah. It was a way to undo the damage, because even like we say this now, looking back on the storyline at the time and go, wow, that was really rough. Even when it was written, fans and readers were going, that's messed up. Yeah. So even in the era in which it was written, which was the 70s, late 70s, there was still this notion of, she got raped. Is no one going to talk about this?
Yeah. I realize that creative license allows for uncomfortable situations to be written and drawn and expounded upon. But I always wonder in these circumstances, was there someone, I think in most organizations, there should be someone who's not considered quote unquote professional that can just pull the people in charge aside and say, I'm not so sure this is a good idea.
You mean like an HR department or literally any woman?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it was definitely a boys' club at Marvel at the time, and that's why they were able to get away with this. And I put that in air quotes. So she lives without her powers for a while, and she helps the X-Men as a pilot, because this is after Rogue not only absorbs the powers, but she basically stole her powers from her. So she gets experimented on by the Brood, and she gains the power of a star and becomes known as Binary. Then she later loses those powers, and she uses the name Warbird, and she becomes an alcoholic after getting depressed about the loss of power. And Tony Stark actually is very helpful in guiding her back on track because of Tony's well-documented struggles with alcoholism. And if you want to hear more about that, you can listen to our Tony Stark episode.
Absolutely. Now, to just briefly comment on this, I think instead of ragging on all the missteps they may have taken with storylines, I read this one. I thought it was excellent. I thought it was realistic. I thought that having someone who is a peer support is a great way to go.
Yeah, and it was certainly understandable that after all of this trauma and everything that she had gone through, that she would seek some sort of a crutch. It turned out to be alcohol, obviously not the best crutch or a good one at all. But the fact that she had Tony there and the fact that they called upon that history of Tony and alcoholism, because this is post-Demon in a Bottle. And he basically says, yeah, I know exactly what you're going through, and let me help you work with this because this is how I deal with it. So she returns to the Ms. Mar-Vell name after the House of M event and joins Iron Man's side as an advocate for the Registration Act during Civil War. Then she joins the New Avengers after the Secret Invasion storyline. And this is really that mid-2000s period, which is really when we see Carol Danvers elevated to a more of an A-lister. She'd always been sort of a B-list. You know, she was very powerful, and she showed up in stories here and there, but she wasn't always a primary focus of the Marvel comic universe. In the mid-2000s, she really gets elevated. Brian Michael Bendis had a large part in that because of the way that he wrote her and his love and appreciation for the character, and she gets elevated. So then she becomes Captain Mar-Vell in 2012, and this is the Kelly Sue DeConnick storyline, and this is really what elevates her and what led to the current incarnation of Captain Mar-Vell as we will see her in film. This is very much based on the Kelly Sue DeConnick run in 2012 with the costume redesigned by Jamie McKelvey. Prior to this, she basically wore a one-suit bathing suit with a little red sash tied around her waist. Not the most effective for fighting bad guys. When Jamie McKelvey redesigned the suit, he said, you know, she used to be an Air Force pilot. This would probably be something much more flight suit like. Plus, we're going to give her some full body covering that isn't just, hey, let's show off the boobs and ass. And that is the costume that we see her in the movie. And that's been basically the basis of all of her costumes with minor modifications since that time period. So credit goes to Jamie McKelvey for his amazing work. He's a fantastic artist and also a damn good costume designer in comics. So he gets credit for sort of helping visually reinvent Carol Danvers, in addition to Kelly Sue DeConnick's writing, which again reinvigorated the character.
It's unusual that we talk about a character like this that was created so long ago. And to be honest with you, aside from the X-Men cartoon, I didn't give much thought to Ms. Mar-Vell, to Carol Danvers, or anything of the sort. So I'll admit, I'm late to the party, but I'm definitely glad I'm there now. Yeah.
As are, I think, a lot of us that have read everything that's happened to her. Again, particularly since that Kelly Sue DeConnick run. So go check that out. In Civil War II, she leads the heroes who want to use a precognitive powered individual to arrest people before they commit crimes. It's basically Superhero Minority Report.
Shout out to Philip K. Dick. He wrote some great sci-fi stuff.
He was a man well ahead of his time. So, and then it was revealed last year that her mother was Kree and that the Psyche-Magnetron revealed her latent powers rather than fused her DNA. And I'm wondering if that's how they're going to sort of pre-retcon before the movie, because I know that many times when a character is going to appear in an MCU film, their comic version is altered to more accurately reflect the new version of the character, because Marvel is smart enough to realize that way more people are going to see the movies than ever read the comics. And this happened with Wanda and Pietro, that all of a sudden, oh no, they were actually Inhumans all along, and that their father wasn't Magneto. And it's a way to sort of get away from the mutant aspect, because this was the time period in which Marvel was basically disowning all the X-Men because of the rights issues. I guess that problem has been solved.
That's going to create some interesting points of, I'll say points of diversion, because you have to make the choice. Are you going to reestablish the things that you changed, or are you going to retcon a retcon? That's going to be an interesting choice.
Based on past history, I'll say they'll probably retcon or retcon. So moving into Carol Danvers' issues, the first thing that I want to talk about is not a problem for her, but it's a problem as to how it's perceived by some. And I also think that this is very telling that we scripted this a while ago. And then, of course, all the stuff that's come out about the movie, that Carol's assertiveness is used against her by some men, either in the Air Force or in superheroing, that she's been a target because of her positive traits. And again, I find it telling that this happens to Carol in the comics, and we're seeing a related thing happen to Brie Larson, that a number of fanboys are saying that they're not going to watch this movie now because that they feel that Brie Larson doesn't want them to see this movie because they are twisting the comments that she made on the press tour. In fact, on my personal Twitter account, I got into an argument with somebody because of some things that I said, basically saying that if you're upset about this, well, then fanboys, maybe you should smile more, because you're more attractive when you smile. And, maybe it's hormones. Maybe you should eat some chocolate. Hashtag, how do you like it? And I got in an argument with a woman of all things, which I was kind of surprised about, who said that I'm not like a butthurt fanboy, whatever like that. I feel that her comments rub me the wrong way. And my response is basically, only a hit dog yelps. So if you're the type of person who's not seeing this because of the comments that Brie Larson made, then you are the exact type of person who needs to understand why she said it. And you are the reason why she said what she said. But I digress. But it ties back in with Carol's notion that she is headstrong, she is assertive, and these are not bad things. And you and I talked offline recently that Carol is referred to by some as bossy. And that's a word that is used almost exclusively by men against women, that if a man shows the same assertiveness and leadership qualities, that he's considered to be a leader and he's assertive and he's strong. But if a woman is take charge and she is very clear in indicating what she wants and how she wants it, well, then she's bossy, and that carries that negative connotation to it. And so, Doc, I wanted to know what your thoughts were on some of the stuff that Carol has had to grapple with over the 50 years of being a character.
I'm not sure I can expound upon it much more than you did, but I'll try. I think that someone who attributes the primary point of humanity to their sexuality is going to end up in a situation where any challenge to the status quo is going to create conflict. That's a fancy way of me saying, I'm a man, you're a woman, I know my role, you need to know yours. Anything that goes against that is going to not just cause friction between you and I, but it's also going to limit your ability to do anything in a setting that's predominantly men. So for Carol, her role as a fighter pilot in a military setting, you realize we're still grappling with this right now, right? Not just male, female, but transgender as well. This is something that is still being discussed. Decades after, in my opinion, it needed to be. The idea that women can be drafted just went through a court proceeding because women have been allowed to participate in the military for a long time. And even though we don't draft here in our country, in the United States, we don't have it right now. The idea is every man has to register if they are of age. And heaven forbid we have to reinstitute a draft. Well, there was a hearing that pointed out women are allowed to fight, and therefore women should be a part of the draft. These are basic concepts of what humanity is supposed to be. The fact that we as a society still have this as a problem or something that needs these clarifications, which is still only 100 years after women in this, it's still less than 100 years for women to have the right to vote. In other words, to have an open voice about how our society is handled speaks volumes. So let's shift the frame a bit. We're still having this discussion right now. This is the year 2019 or 2019, not to tick people off about that. Women get the right to vote in 1920. The idea that a woman could work outside the house really starts to take shape consistently in the 1950s and 60s. The idea that women can participate in athletic events, like running a marathon, that lasted until the 1970s. Almost Anthony and my lifetime. The idea of Title IX in sports is still something that comes up as a discussion. And now it goes so far as to say that we have female superheroes that are incredibly strong and may very well be the most powerful versions of superheroes is something that people can't wrap their head around.
I was going to say that on a side note and a related note to that point, Kevin Feige has basically come out and said that Captain Mar-Vell is the strongest superhero in the MCU. And I think that this film is going to showcase that, and we're certainly going to see her help battle Thanos in Avengers Endgame. And also, to your point, also going back to something that we didn't mention really in the creation, but when she became a superhero for the first time and she was originally known as Ms. Marvel, that name was not an accident. That Ms. was a clear indication of Ms. Magazine, Gloria Steinem, the feminist movement that took place in the late 60s in the United States that was definitely indicative of the rise of female power and feminism in the U.S., and Carol Danvers was very much a symbol of that.
Part of what becomes a problem is that as women have taken a much larger role equal to that of men in multiple parts of society, there is a false assumption that the gain of that type of power indicates a loss of femininity. That's absurd, but it is actually a very natural conclusion that a large segment of society has come to.
I thought you were going to say that with the rise of femininity, it also equates with a loss of masculinity or a reduction in the role that men play in society, as if it were a zero-sum game.
In all honesty, I think you're saying it better than I did. And that's fine, as long as the point gets across. But if a person is challenged on what they consider to be the essence of their existence, then they're going to, in general, fight for it rather than acquiesce. So someone like Carol Danvers taking a position that traditionally, and I use that term sarcastically, is taken by a male, then that means that men suffer because one less male can be in that position. Once again, absolutely false. If you had a society of nothing but men, then you would think that all men would look to have what they consider to be their appropriate position, their occupation, their drives, their families, their motivations in life. And yet we don't look at it that way. You mentioned we look at it as a zero-sum game, as if the population itself isn't increasing, as if we don't look on a day-to-day basis for the general resources of what's needed to help society flourish, as if that has ever come into question. We'll have fights about what's most important at any given time, but we don't say, I want to make sure that women don't have jobs because that's going to destroy the planet, except that's the extent that some people take it when it comes to a backlash. I think that that is irrational. And the response by Carol Danvers, it's not outrage. It's production. I don't have to fight you on the merit of your argument. I just have to get the job done. And it's kind of a interesting workaround. In other words, she doesn't try to prove that she is better than men or better than women. She's trying to point out that Carol Danvers is absolutely awesome. But that leads to, in my opinion, an extra energy level that she has to have at all times, because even if she's not consciously trying to create that fight, it's still there. And it's something that doesn't go away just because she has a different approach to it. Because even if she doesn't view it as the number one issue, many men view it as the number one issue.
Well, I think you can ask any woman that's dealt with men in any measure of society that is something that is always in the back of their mind. And it's basically the very notion of male privilege, that when men do something, when men make achievements, they never question, well, he only got it because he's a man or whatever. But if a woman accomplishes anything great, it's, well, did she sleep her way to the top? What did she do? Did she take that spot away from a man? Like you said, and these are constant things that are thrown in women's faces with every achievement that they accomplish, which they have to, as you said, constantly maintain that level of energy to always be prepared to address those concerns rather than focus all of their thoughts on doing the job. They have to be able to defend that in a way that men never do. Similarly with raising children. If a woman is out taking care of her kids and the kids are screaming, it's, oh, she's being a bad mom, whatever. If a father is out in public and the kids are misbehaving, it's, well, dad's babysitting the kids for a while and he's doing the best that he can. There's this assumption that there are roles for women and there are roles for men. And if you step out of those roles, that you are doing an imbalance to society, as though that is all that it's based on. And I'm going to speak with male privilege in the sense that I recognize that this statement is privileged, but I don't care what you use to pee with. Can you get the job done? But that's my utilitarian mindset speaking, that I understand it's about doing the job. But by the same token, I can say that as a man because I'm never questioned on my ability to do the job.
I'll also add another part of the topic, because right now we're talking about male and female, but I'll add in multiple layers to these types of discussions, be it ethnicity, specific race, nationality. All of those factors may carry a similar weight to them for each individual, depending on what their circumstance is. The one that I remember reading about a long time ago and having some difficulty wrapping my head around was the Northern Ireland situation. And when peace was brought there with the United Kingdom and everything else.
The Troubles.
I could not believe reading it. These are people all in the exact same spot, in theory, with very similar histories and cultures, that purely on the idea of sometimes religion, but sometimes even just like what street you were on, completely destroyed lives. That was unfathomable to me, despite the fact that I live in the United States that has its own complicated history. But I realized that's not much different than that. And that's not much different than any movement that allows for a certain subset of people that feel like they are not being respected, trying to find a way to gain respect, and the status quo pointing out that they don't want things taken away from them, not recognizing that they're not losing anything. They're gaining allies. And I think that mindset shift is incredibly difficult for one person, let alone a whole group that decides to organize against what they consider to be a threat.
Oh, it's crabs in a bucket mentality to a certain extent. Absolutely. And then you also get the gatekeeping notion. You have litmus tests and purity tests. We see this a lot in politics. Certain subgroups of political parties will claim, well, you're not X enough for us, and that you're not really a member of this party or this organization. And they end up doing a disservice because they focus on the areas in which they disagree, those small areas in which they are not in lockstep mind agreement, rather than the potential overwhelming majority in which they do agree, because there needs to be this ideological purity. But I mean, we could do a whole other show based solely on that. So
clearly.
as evidenced by how long we've gone on that. So let's move on to the next one before we digress any further. She carries the mantle of Captain Mar-Vell and all of the associated baggage with that. And this is something that, and we will mention it here. And then next week when we cover Monica Rambeau, we can also talk about the notion of a legacy character, which we've done a couple of different episodes on different legacy characters. But Carol is the latest Captain Mar-Vell, and everyone is sort of carrying on the legacy of the original Mar-Vell, who has been long dead in Marvel Comics and unable to, I guess, defend himself, quote unquote, or able to say much about the carrying on of that legacy. And whether it's Genis Vell, his son, or Monica Rambeau, or there's a couple other characters that have worn that moniker, there's a baggage associated with it because of Captain Mar-Vell and how amazing of a hero that he was, and everyone wants to live up to that standard, and that's not always an easy thing to live up to. And so I wonder if you can unpack that a little bit.
The good news is you have a blueprint. You know that this person handled certain situations with as much diplomacy as it can be dealing with villains, but with power, with grace, with positive results, and with the respect of his peers and society at large. It's hard to get that total package, as we have seen throughout all comics. So when you get that embodiment, you try and recreate it as best you can. Carol didn't ask for that burden, clearly, and I know we've done plenty of episodes about that with Jessica Jones, where you don't know what you're going to get, but it happens to be something that's so incredibly powerful and overwhelming. I think Carol handles that part of it incredibly well. The difference comes from her personality, because Mar-Vell was the type to look at an overall situation, assess what he thought the right thing was to do, and act with that as his number one motivation. And you said it to me a number of times off the mic. What's Carol's motivation?
F you, that's why.
Exactly. She loves the idea of just getting done what it is she thinks she needs to get done. It may not be the ideal, but she can live with those consequences.
Well, part of that is, and we did neglect to mention this during the background, is she is the only daughter among her family. She was raised with brothers, and her father had a sexist mindset and basically believed that even though Carol was the smartest of them, that because she was a woman, she shouldn't go to college, she shouldn't do this or that everything should be focused on her brothers, one of whom ended up dying in an accident that Carol was not able to help with. And she had an estranged relationship with her father. So a lot of this stems from, frankly, daddy issues. I hate to use that term because I find it to be kind of demeaning, but the notion that she was constantly seeking her father's approval that she could never get. And because he died before they could reconcile, she never really got that. So she is forever chasing that notion. And that's something that Kelly Sue DeConnick has talked about numerous times. But the idea that she is chasing her father's approval and she can never get it. So she's going to do the right thing, or she's going to act in whatever way she wants to, because screw you, that's why.
Yeah, that.
And we compare it and contrast against Captain America, who they get compared a lot to, not just because of the name, but because they are very powerful characters and they're often looked at as leaders. Steve does the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Carol does it because F you, that's why.
That's a great way to put it.
That's why she gets back up.
That's a great way to put it.
She will not let anyone take her down.
Right. And that situation of growing up in that type of environment just ties back to the very first point that we made. You don't have to go to the extreme of mentioning an entire group or entire part of society that's fighting against you. You have it in your own home. So you don't get a break. You thought that you overcame it just with how you dealt with your own family, and then to extrapolate that out to finding out there are multiple people in the world. This wasn't a one-off thing. In other words, you get a situation that you think you've handled and it's temporary, and you just move on to something else. And it just gets thrown right back that, no, you're going to be dealing with this for as long as the situation and the conditions exist. By the way, those conditions continue to exist almost in perpetuity. I want to just tie this all together so far to say that to have a character have such amazing abilities to have to justify that they should have those abilities in the first place. They should be the bastion of all that is good, to be the alpha dog, to be the number one person in an organization, to do all of this while basically having people tell you that it doesn't matter because you're not exactly what we were looking for. That's the ultimate in getting a chip on your shoulder.
You think? And that, frankly, again, and I'm sure we'll get to this in the out-of-universe treatment portion, but that's something that so many women can relate to. And that's one of the things that has appealed to the fans of the character, especially, again, since 2012 with the rewrite and the reinvention of the character. But the notion that she has this chip on her shoulder in part because she's a woman and because she faces not only all of these otherworldly, intergalactic, extra-dimensional beings, but has to deal with misogyny and the patriarchy. That is a villain that millions of comic book readers and potential comic book readers can certainly relate to. And that she is their hero, I think, speaks to that. And the fact that Kelly Sue wrote her so well really gave women a rallying point and a new heroine and a new symbol to go, if she can do it, then I can. And you saw it recently in the red carpet for the Captain Marvel film with that little girl showing up dressed in the full Captain Marvel regalia and those amazing moments that she had with Brie Larson. That is what, again, going back to sort of what we were talking about earlier, but that's what representation is about. But the notion that it's stuff like this that will eventually, in one day, not in our lifetimes, realistically speaking, but maybe one day, hopefully, create an equal playing field. It's stuff like this that gets you there and that inspires the next generation to fight just a little bit harder so that they get that equality, and that maybe one day this will all happen and we won't have to ideally worry about stuff like this. Well, is the hero a man, woman, trans, cis, bi, heterosexual, homosexual, what have you, that none of that will ultimately matter.
By the way, you're aware that we're taking a risk talking about all this stuff. And what I mean by that is there are several, I'm sure, listeners that have a very spiritual, cultural, religious background that have a lot of questions and a lot of concerns about the things that you just mentioned. And the fact that we're taking a certain stance on this may make them feel alienated. And to that, I would just like to openly say that we're not trying to make people change their minds, but we are trying to make sure that they are open to the fact that people remain people, no matter what else is going on with them. So I'm saying very openly that I think people have the ability to make their own adult decisions and do what they want with their life. And I do think that there are biological bases for things as to their sexuality, as to their aspirations and goals in life, as well as what they've gone through. The number of times I said nature versus nurture is wrong. It's nature and nurture. I strongly continue to hold that conviction. And if anyone feels that we are threatening in any way, then that's the wrong way to look about this. I'm extending an open hand for a handshake. I am not throwing my fist at you, because these types of conversations can get very uncomfortable very quickly if you're not used to having them. So my advice right now for everyone listening, we haven't even gotten to treatment yet. I'm not going to tell her to change who she is. I am not going to tell her who she should look to as a great female role model or male role model in those categories. I'm not going to insult her intelligence. I am not going to tell her that she needs to be more of a female, because that was a fear when we first chose this character, that people would get the idea of, oh boy, Doc's going to set, someone like CAROL Danvers straight. And I want to make it clear that she does a great job, and we're just looking to see how we could add an extra boost. That's it. So if we lose some listeners because we're very open, candid, and honest about what we think is appropriate for people living their lives in a mature, sophisticated, and productive, happy way, then by all means, make sure that you get your own counseling and find out what it is that you can do to have a similar life.
You were way more tactful and political than I would have been about that type of situation.
I already know that.
Fair point. Fair point. So let's move on to the last thing. I want to talk about the Marcus incident. So much has been said about it. The articles have been written. It's been discussed ad nauseum for the last 30 something years. And this, again, even in and of itself, the fact that we talk about this as a major incident for her is in and of itself male privilege, because something like this sexual assault and the impregnation, certainly impregnation is something that is exclusively female in nature, but the notion of sexual assault is almost always spoken of as something that happens to women. They're victims of it. And the language that we use is almost exclusively very patriarchal in a sense. And it's sad that we continue to have this discussion about this, that, if we really want to make a female character's backstory tragic, let's throw some rape in there. There's a whole TV trope about it. But the fact remains that it happened, and I think it would be ill-advised if we simply ignored it. So some of the fallout from that Marcus incident certainly stuck with Carol for a number of years. And if you would dare to take a crack at it, I'd be curious to see what some of your thoughts were as you prepare yourself. And this episode, I think, really more so than any of the other ones we've done, is definitely one of the hotter topic-wise. So I'll be very curious to see what some of our fans think of it and how they react.
Right. In a situation like this, I'm going to touch on the idea of sexual assault as trauma and the possible responses to it. So I apologize if it comes across as too general as opposed to directly dealing with the character of Carol Danvers. Time and time again, it has been shown that rape is a crime of power before it is a crime of sex. In other words, it's not just a matter of the person trying to obtain stimulation. It's also to fill a void of dominance, usually. I am also well aware that male on female rape is the most talked about, but there are other iterations, and any person can rape any other person, and it does happen. It's horrible whenever it happens. I want to make sure I mention some things that over decades have become myths, and I want to dispel them. If a person is in a long-standing relationship with another person, then yes, rape can still happen. If a person is married or in a civil union with another person, rape can still happen. If one or more people are intoxicated or under the influence of certain substances or medications, rape can still happen. If a person no longer gives consent to a sexual act and that sexual act still happens, it is rape. Are we clear on this?
I'm clear. So I know we probably should have thrown up a trigger warning at the start of this episode, or at the very least at the start of this discussion, because I'm just realizing now that if any of our listeners have dealt with sexual assault in their personal lives, this may be a little difficult to hear. Certainly, we apologize for that. We're trying to discuss this in as clinical terms as we possibly can, with all of the empathy due victims that they are certainly entitled to. So I'll make a note in the show notes that this is going to be a difficult episode potentially for some people to listen to, but it's still important to have the conversation.
And thank you for pointing it out, because I want to make it clear on my end as well. I am not blaming anyone who has been a victim of sexual assault. You did not deserve it. You did not put yourself in a situation where that should have happened. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's say an event like that has happened. I'm going to go back to the basics here when it comes to making sure, first of all, that you are safe. If at all possible, contacting someone that you know that you consider to be a positive influence in your life is a great way to go. Contacting the proper authorities if you consider it to be a safe situation is also incredibly important. You do not have to suffer in silence. There are hotlines out there, and this would be a time where, although we've listed the National Suicide Hotline on numerous occasions and we give the general disclaimer, there are other specific hotlines for victims of sexual assault. You do have a right to privacy. And until there is a point where there's some legal action to be taken, you have a right to remain completely anonymous as you see fit. There is no mandate that says you have to press charges or make any claims of specific crimes if you feel like that is going to cause more problems for you under the circumstances. There is no obligation for that. We have well established, however, that the number of cases that have occurred are way, way underreported. And that is a shame, because the idea that people are allowed to do this without having to manage the societal consequences of such actions is dangerous, because that type of behavior is often repeated because the person has allowed themselves to create a narrative that will create the scenario over and over again. I'm not giving specific names, but I'm pretty sure you all recognize, or unfortunately may know, people in those types of circumstances and wonder. To those who have not suffered sexual assault, but are aware of people that are at risk, the best thing you can do is contact them and find out how they're doing. They may not wish to talk to you about details, and that is their right. You may wish to protect them. Providing them options for safe circumstances is wonderful. But I can tell you that mandating such circumstance or such opportunity without consideration for that person's emotions and choices is not beneficial. Once again, I apologize for not specifically going through the Marcus incident with CAROL Danvers and her responses to other heroes and how she felt. I will simply say that there are many people in the world that have felt a similar way. And if you have an opportunity to make a positive impact in someone's life who has experienced that level of trauma, even if it's just to talk to them for a short while, on their terms and at their level, so that they don't feel overwhelmed or feel as if you are trying to take command of a situation that is not yours, then please do so. Because even in the moment, they may not say anything, but I can assure you that you've done some good.
Beautifully said. I think that was comprehensive, or at least as comprehensive as we can be in the short time frame and circumstances that allow. And I don't really know what else can be said. So let's try and follow that up now. Of course, now this is like a, well, the Nemesis Lincoln, how was the play type incident, but treatment, starting as we always do with In-Universe, treatment of CAROL Danvers. What would you, and I feel like this is one of those situations where you would say that you are just trying to make Carol a better hero and that you're not really trying to fix her. And you alluded to that earlier, that you're not going to tell her who she should be or how she should act, etc., but rather just how to cope with some of the things that she has dealt with in a way to further improve her and make her more effective, more efficient, and just generally improve her life. I think that would be a fair, based on knowing how you've gone for the previous 40 episodes. I think I kind of have a general idea about how you're going to go with this.
Yeah.
But so I'll let you take the wheel.
Sure. So we've established that Carol has done a lot, been a good hero, great hero. She had to overcome many things. Kudos to her. Going through what she went through with everything related to the pregnancy, to the relationships, the fact that she doesn't get the opportunity to speak to her father, the fact that she's not able to speak, quote unquote, to Mar-Vell, although they've done so many teasers with him over the years. You just wonder, when is he going to break through? When is he coming back to life, et cetera, et cetera. But I digress. There are so many things that someone as powerful as her can do that she may end up focusing on the few areas that are beyond her control. She's not a true manipulator of all of the things around her. She's not trying to be an overlord. She just wants to get her job done, whatever it is at the given time. So creating a construct that will allow her to do that more on her terms and preemptively address some of the things that may be barriers to that might be most beneficial. Almost like a disclaimer. I know she can't fly around like holding this thing saying, yes, I am comfortable with who I am. No, I didn't think that it was the best way to go about this pregnancy. No, I don't regret the fact that I have to live with the things that have happened. Nothing that ridiculous. But the publicity that goes along with her success is something that she has to navigate in a way that I'd almost say reminds me of how certain sports heroes have had to deal with things. And I use the term hero loosely for sports because I recognize there are people that are doing more things directly good. But there is a way to say something without saying something. So the best example I could think of right now is someone that is opposite of your team, and that's Derek Jeter.
Okay.
He became the master of answering every single question and giving no information. Absolutely not a thing. And yet people loved him. Why? Because they recognized that he gave a lot of effort. They recognized that he was on a winner, which, once again, I'm not implying that the teams that didn't win are quote unquote losers. I'm saying they didn't win. It's a competition in sports. Carol Danvers doesn't even have that aspect to deal with, but she does have the greater societal aspect to say that if you want to talk male versus female, quote unquote, versus, then she's on the starting, quote unquote, losing team. And she's always had to prove that she's the winner. Well, at this point, the evidence is overwhelming that she's a winner. So now she can scale it back with that. She can actually say, look at my track record. You point to that, literally scoreboard. And that's enough. If people want to get into details and fight with her about it, she can get into the weeds. But once again, how on earth does throwing yourself in the barrel as another crab end up helping the situation? So learning to take that step back and giving yourself the opportunity to pick and choose your spots as to where you get into those types of discussions goes a long way. Instead of every event being a nail that has to be hammered down, you recognize that some events are nails, some are screws, some are just not worth even touching. And as soon as you start to discern those, you'll notice that people end up handling your positive traits in a much better light. Yes, a lot of this is what people will refer to as window dressing, because you're not changing who you are, but you are making sure that you are controlling the environment more than you have before. But I think that's a better way to go about it than taking positive attributes and dumbing them down or ignoring them or throwing them away for something that's more negative. Because that has happened to many, many characters. They change because other people thought it was appropriate for them to change, as opposed to them recognizing that it was a trait that wasn't working for them. Carol doesn't need to do that. Now, how to go about it in the universe? I mean, there are so many characters that look up to her anyway. So I don't think it's that hard in that sense. I don't think you need a lot of extemporaneous situations other than having a good writer. This is one of those where I would rely on the fact that people in totality recognize good when they see it. They really do, if they give themselves the opportunity. She now is at the forefront of the universe, and every action is being scrutinized. She doesn't have to worry about how many of them she gets right. She just has to make sure she promotes that the good that she's doing at any one moment is the best that she could have done, because she can live with those consequences.
For what it's worth, I respect Derek Jeter.
Aw, thank you. The Red Sox suck.
You know, I was trying to be polite. I was trying to be genteel.
Yes, I know.
Tactful.
Yeah, forget that. No. You guys just won a championship? You kidding me? No. No. No olive branch here.
Wow. Okay. Way to piss on my cereal then.
Yeah. Had to be done. By the way, that's kind of my point. It's not that you change what you believe or your personality. It's that you know how to do it with more tact. I purposely ignored that tact. And at that point, I'm pretty sure there are plenty of listeners that were like, either, yeah, way to go, Doc. Yeah, or, wow, Doc is a real jerk. That was inflammatory. That's the opposite of what I would do if I were Carol Danvers in that moment. The way I would have or should have said that to you is, I know it was difficult for you to say that, and I greatly appreciate it, because I know the Red Sox won this year, but I guarantee you the Yankees are going to be back, and, we're really going to get you next time. Same information. Didn't change who my fandom, where it stood. It didn't change where your fandom stood. It acknowledged that you were willing to make a mature comment to me, and I'm able to reciprocate. Real simple back and forth. And yet, if I allowed my emotion to go to a certain level, regardless of if I'm male or female, because we know how females are quote unquote emotional, that comes up all the time, right? As opposed to the passion and the fire that men have. Just that slight change makes all the difference. And Carol learning to do that goes a long way.
I thought you were just going to make a comment about how you said all these wonderful, nice things about Carol, and I was still hung up on the Derek Jeter thing.
No, because that is a very important thing.
Okay, fair enough. So out of universe, you're dealing with a very powerful woman. Let's just take the superpowers out of it. She's very respected, but she's got a lot of baggage. I swear to God, I'm not naming names or directing anybody to make any suppositions about who it is that I'm talking about. I'm really just trying to go as generic as possible. I'm not advocating, as I sometimes do in the past, where I have a particular example in mind. This is not that. How would you address that, I guess, differently, minus the superpower aspect, and just treat the woman?
I would like to point out that my office is a place where there can be a level of vulnerability, because in general, in those circumstances, that person has to, quote unquote, be on all the time. You have to present yourself a certain way to multiple people, even at home, and there's no downtime from that. Once again, not saying that they have a different personality, but we all know that there are parts of how we interact with people, as we just demonstrated, that can either be amped up or toned down.
Yeah, I wouldn't know anything about that.
So my office is the opportunity where whatever levels they're used to using in back and forths, don't feel obligated to continue those levels while you're dealing with me directly. If you typically are always tampering down your responses to things because you have to be close to the vest, very buttoned up, because a lot of people are relying on you for something with your position of power, and you make severe, significant decisions that affect multiple people, you can let loose a little bit with me. Nothing that's going to cause harm to myself or yourself or anything of the sort, but it's all right to lay back a little bit.
Let your hair down a little bit.
If you have hair. But anyway, on the other end, if you're in a situation where you are meant to be a firebrand and you're used to having to cause controversy or create situations of large discussion, and people are relying on you now that you're representing a large group of people, maybe it's generational, maybe it's political, cultural, financial, I don't know, whatever category. And you always have to be this person that drives up the energy. You can keep it mellow if you never get that opportunity. Recharge your batteries. Don't worry about how it's going to look. This is all confidential stuff in these sessions. So whichever end of the spectrum the person is dealing with, that's the way I would go. I would let them know that that's their right. And they may not believe me. Part of it may be the actual gender situation. If it's upfront like that, then we'll talk about it. If it's not as much of a problem, great. And if there is a situation, to tie it back once again to the CAROL Danvers discussion, if there's a matter of sexual trauma and it's something that they're comfortable talking about, as with most forms of trauma with PTSD or whatnot, then I give them the opportunity. If they don't want to discuss details, that's fine. If they've never had the opportunity to say anything, and this is their opportunity, then go for it. My number one skill during this is to listen. I may give positive feedback. I may give suggestions on how they can feel better about themselves, or if that's totally fine and they're comfortable in their own skin, I may give suggestions as to what may help them in their day-to-day lives so that they get better results than what they're already doing. But my point is, I want to make sure it's their opportunity to empower their lives in a way that they're not able to do because they always have to be on, whatever on means for them in that moment. Give them the power to show all sides of themselves, not just the one that they've had to use to fight for so long.
Yeah, I know a thing or two about being on in my life. I feel that just by virtue of my personality, when I'm in a social situation, a lot of people will look to me to be the one to spark the discussion, to bring the party with them or other things. And I know that sounds a little egotistical to say that, but just by virtue of the social circle that I run in, I'm typically looked at as being that type of person. And there are times in which I don't want to be that person, or I'm not in the mood to be on. And then I get, are you okay? Something wrong? Are you sick? Whatever. And then I feel that I have to bring that energy and be on so that other people will not worry about me or question themselves. So it can be draining. And so I certainly do understand and appreciate where that comes from and how someone like that would be appreciative of having that kind of safe space where they can be the mellow type. They can be a little more pensive. They can take things slower, more quietly, etc. Because especially as I've gotten older, I've come to appreciate that the energy that you save by not being on allows you to direct it somewhere where it can be potentially more efficient or more effective in another area and not spending all that energy on appearances. In my older age, speaking as a 36-year-old elder statesman, but as I've gotten older, I've come to appreciate just not worrying so much about appearances. And I think, frankly, that's why some senior citizens just do and say what they want because they don't care what other people think. They're just going to get away with whatever because, oh, look, they're being a silly old person, or they're just, grandma's running off at the mouth again, or, Gampy's just going to say whatever it is that comes to his mind, how, whatever the scenario is. It's because you have decided that your energies are better spent elsewhere.
Excellent point.
So we're going to wrap all this up and see what happens when we get CAROL Danvers on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Ms. Danvers. I'm Dr. Issues.
I'm sorry, doctor. I need a minute.
Sure. Take all the time you need. If it's okay, can I ask why?
I dated a psychiatrist for a while, and he was brutally murdered. Every time I talk with a psychiatrist, I can't help but remember Michael. It's been a while, but the memories come back, and I can't always stop them.
I'm so sorry for your loss.
It was really rough because he was killed specifically to get to me. If we weren't together, he'd probably still be alive.
That does sound like a heavy burden. How do you honor his memory?
By fighting the good fight. By being the best version of myself I can be. He wouldn't ask for anything more than that.
Excellent. It sounds like you've given the proper thought to this.
You're not the first one to ask.
I realize you must have had so many experiences in your life, including that one where there's a lot to unpack. I apologize if we've gone down a road you didn't intend to. If there's something else that you'd like to discuss, otherwise be my guest.
It's fine. I like remembering him, and it is what it is. What I wanted to talk to you about is being a leader.
All right, I think we're getting somewhere. What do you think your role is as leader of a team?
That's just it. I'm not always certain. For years, I was doing my own thing, or I was part of a group but not the head. So I didn't have people answering to me, and I didn't have to always set the tone for everyone else. I could be myself and not worry about the impact. Now I have other heroes under me, and there's a structure there. I feel like I'm chafing sometimes, like I can't always go out and just bust heads because it will interfere with a larger plan or something.
Wow. Okay, do you have a mentor?
I had one, Mar-Vell. That's why I have the name that I have. He was great. I miss him.
Well, then I'm kind of repeating an earlier question, but it's directly related to what you just said. How are you honoring his memory?
The same way I honor Michael. Fight the good fight. Help people. And that's why I carry his name now. It's always been a way to honor him.
Are there things that you do differently than him when it comes to being a role model?
He was just so good at his core. He did the right thing because it was the right thing to do. I do the right thing because, screw you, I'll show you I can be good.
So, do you want to feel more like Mar-Vell?
Well, I'm not really interested in dying.
Touché. What I meant was...
I know what you mean. A little gallows humor. Sorry. I guess what I really want, what I really like, is the approval. Someone saying, good job, you know?
It sounds like you never got that.
Well, Dad wasn't always the best when it came to approval, at least not for me. My brothers, sure. Me, not so much.
And why do you think that is?
Because he was a misogynist. He didn't think women could do anything outside of the home. And I wanted to prove to him, still do, that I can be so much more.
Well, by any objective measure, you certainly exceeded the mark.
But he doesn't know that. He never will.
Then I didn't realize that door was closed.
Yeah, he died a few years ago. Never got to show him what I could do. Never got to show him who I really am. Who I became.
So, who are you trying to show it to now? Okay, it's okay. You don't have to have someone in mind, because you're going to show it to Dad right now.
What?
I'm going to give you an empty space. If it makes it more personal, it can be a chair. That's your dad. Anything and everything that you wanted to say, you're saying to him right now. If you're not comfortable right now, do it at any point that you feel it's necessary. Anywhere, anytime.
Seriously? Just talk to the empty chair like it's my dad.
Go ahead.
Hey, Dad. How's it going? This is stupid.
Keep going.
So, how have you been? How's heaven? Are you even there? Wherever you are, I'm sure you're having a beer. Always good for one of those. Is Steve there with you? I miss him. So, guess what, Dad? I'm Captain Mar-Vell. That's right. I'm a bona fide superhero. I've saved the world. I've saved you. Saved you more times than you could count. Except for that last time. Couldn't save you from cancer. Couldn't save Mar-Vell either. Cancer. That's one fight I wasn't there for. I probably should have been. Even if just for Mom. You know, she's been so strong since you left. She has to be. Not that you gave her much choice. She's stronger than you could have ever seen, even when you were here. That's where I get it from, I guess. You know, it's because of you I joined the Air Force. You didn't think a woman should go to college or have a job or do anything important. Because you just had to be the big macho man and women couldn't do anything without a man. Well, I've done plenty. And I've done it without you. How do you like that? Is that good enough for you, Dad? Am I as good as Steve and Joe now? Steve's dead and Joe's an architect, but the hero in the family, the real hero, is your daughter. Didn't see that one coming, did you? I could fly. Not just with a plane, but I could fly my damn self. You know, I'm strong too. I'm stronger than you. Stronger than any man. I can shoot energy blasts from my hands. They'd knock you on your ass, that's for sure. You know, I'm not just any hero. I'm one of the biggest and the best. I lead the Avengers. You know, people have tried to take these powers from me. That's how much they want them. Some of them have taken them from me, but I've always gotten them back. Always. Because I never back down. Because I won't let anyone take this from me. Not you, not anyone. Not again. Damn, Doc, that felt really good. I didn't think that would work, but it did.
You're welcome?
Thanks. Next time I need an outlet like this, I'll give you a call.
Please give me as much advance notice as possible. We need to reinforce the room.
Sorry about the damage. Send the bill to Avengers Tower. Tony will pay for it.
I think we have a running tab.
How much are your insurance premiums at this point?
They don't fit on a regular check, to be honest with you. Too many zeros.
So you need like one of those like giant Ed McMahon type checks?
Yeah, except I don't increase the font to go with it.
Ooh.
Like I said, running tab.
Yeah. Tony should really chip in more if he's going to be sending the Avengers over here to talk to you.
Yeah, well, I'm still waiting for my next session with him. If you go back to that episode, you know how that went.
Yeah. Hopefully he's dried out since then.
Oh, yeah, I don't think that's much of a problem. At least nobody wants to mention it anymore.
True. So I think this was certainly much more in-depth and heavy than we initially anticipated. I don't think when we plotted out how or what we were going to talk about that we envisioned it would go quite like this.
No, I didn't think it would go this way either.
Not in a bad way, mind you, just that this episode definitely turned in a direction that we were not expecting, although I think it made for some fascinating and excellent points. And I really sincerely hope that our listeners take something away from this and that you take just a moment of little self-reflection if you feel that anything we've said has registered with you. I know that this happens to me on the regular, that I will often take the time to say that I used to think this way, or I had these feelings at one point in my life, and I've done my best to try and recognize moving forward some changes that I want to make, because at the end of the day, all we can try to do is be the best version of ourselves that we can be, but we can't really get there unless we're willing to examine who we truly are and how we got there. And that implies having a lot of very difficult discussions and a lot of self-reflection. And not everyone is willing or able to make those kinds of choices or have those thoughts all the time. And you don't have to have them all the time. You don't have to be on a constant journey of self-discovery, because that can be exhausting. But during moments and discussions like this, I think it's important to just take that second or that moment and just reflect on if there's anything that you've done or said over your life that has led to something like that, or potentially led to someone feeling less than wanted or less than whole, and how not to make those kinds of choices in the future. And certainly, by extension, that no one makes those choices that make you feel anything less than yourself. So if there's something in this episode that resonated with you or really stuck out with you, or if you think that there's something that we said that was really out there or incorrect or wrong, please, we love the feedback, good or bad, because, and be honest with us, because we're not going to improve the show, or we're not going to improve as human beings unless we are frank and honest with each other. So please send us an email, capesonthecouch@gmail.com. You can tweet at us at capesonthecouch. You can comment on our Instagram at capesonthecouch, or you can comment in response to the Patreon listing if you choose to subscribe, or once the episodes go public, you can comment on them. Patreon.com/capesonthecouch. And I really feel that there's not too much else to be said.
Nope. I know this is the part where Anthony usually asks me for something and I have some witty or profound comment, but I don't have it this time because I said everything that I felt was necessary during the episode itself. And I just want to reiterate that every conversation that we have in life is an opportunity for better or worse for both parties involved. I greatly hope that you take that into consideration the next time you talk to someone about something that you would consider controversial.
Very well said. So next week we are going to cover Monica Rambeau and following up with our back-to-back Captain Marvels. And we're going to have a guest voice on for the skit, Janae. So we will cover a little bit more about that in next week's episode. And then following that will be the Monocle from Umbrella Academy and John Constantine. So for Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.